Hello, welcome back to Crushing Sounds. My name is Chris, and I have a very interesting video for you all this time. I am joined by the drummer of my band, Reuben Spry, and essentially, I have asked him to come along onto Crushing Sounds today because, as you might have seen on my Instagram post, I've had the hardest fucking time trying to dissect the new Gojira album, Fortitude. So I needed some assistance, so I brought along Reuben. He's a way better Gojira fan than I will ever be, so hopefully two of us working together, we can unpack this very interesting album. So hello Reuben, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you, on this lovely overcast day that we're having in the lovely England. So let's get some context. What's Gojira to you?
So, Gojira are the French death metal, if you can call them that. I guess death metal, groove metal, some prog in there as well. French band formed in the late 90s and under the name Godzilla originally. Obviously, Toho, the owners of the Godzilla franchise, weren't very happy with that. So they changed the name to Gojira, which is the Japanese pronunciation of the monster's name. And they're one of those bands where like the name is very representative of what the band sounds like. They are an absolutely fucking enormous band in terms of sound and scope, and especially some of their earlier stuff is just this super heavy emphasis on groove and innovative guitar techniques like pick scrapes and very heavy use of pinch harmonics and just super brutal vocals, but very melodic at the same time.
Yeah, sounds about right to me. Not just pinch harmonics, but natural harmonics. They use a hell of a lot as well. They love a good run down the natural harmonic. So how did you get into Gojira?
So I'd heard of them a couple years back when my friend went to see them open for Dragon Force.
Wow, I bet they probably stole the night.
Oh yeah, he said they were way better. I mean,
I mean, Dragon Force are pretty notoriously bad live.
yeah, I've heard that. I mean, because I assumed because of the name and being the openers for Dragon Force, they were also Japanese. I was quite surprised when I found out they were French.
Yeah, fair enough.
Um, and then a few years later, I was in uni and Magma came out, and that's when Gojira sort of blew up in, I guess, the metal mainstream.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
they were headlining places like Hellfest and Bloodstock, uh, spots on the main stage at Download, and everyone was suddenly into them.
Yeah. I know because my brother Mike, he knew about Gojira because he went to Sonosphere. I want to say in 2014, I think it was, and they were playing, and he was checking out the lineup, and I think La Fonte Sauvage was their latest album at the time, and he was just drooling over that. He was just like, Chris, you've got to listen to this fucking thing. But I didn't dive into Gojira until again when around Magma came out. I even reviewed Magma on this website's first year when it was a shitty written website on Google Sounds. I reviewed Magma on that, and it was my number one album of that year. I believe that was 2016, because I still think Magma is an absolute genius album. It is. I understand there's a bit of discourse around it in the Gojira fandom. It's a lot more mainstream than what had come before, a lot more catchier, a lot more hooks and all that. But what are your thoughts on Magma?
Well, as someone who definitely really vibes with the early Gojira stuff, albums like The Link from Master Series, The Way of All Flesh, Magma is just a really good album, regardless of what genre it is, I think. Just because it's a lot more sort of condensed down and a lot less like progressive, I suppose. Songs like Stranded, a lot of people go,
Oh
"Oh, it's
yeah,
just Sandman, it's far too simple." But I'm like, yeah, but sometimes simple is effective. And when I saw them on their recent tour in the UK before this pandemic stuff happened, and they played Stranded, it took the roof off.
yeah. I saw them at that year's download just before Magma came out, but Stranded and Silvera had been released as singles, and they played both of them, and they just tore the fucking roof off. This was Download 2016, by the way, the wettest download. Water was flying through trenches into this tiny ass tent. But even so, people were going absolutely ballistic. Mike was at the barrier for that, and he lost his voice after that. But Yeah, but that was yeah. There was Gojira were just became the biggest metal band on the planet, almost like it felt overnight, really, owing mostly to the success, I guess, of Magma and its two lead singles, Stranded and Silvera. And I still stand by that album. I think it's a great album, but I understand that it's a more, I guess, digestible departure from what they were known for, so I can understand that level of discourse. But a great album is a great album, I suppose. But that brings us, I guess, onto the new album, Fortitude. And God, I've never had such a difficult time dissecting my thoughts on an album. I've probably heard this thing about 7 or 8 times by now, and oh man, I think initial coming out of like the seventh or eighth listen, this album I think is definitely a grower. It's one that needs to be heard a few times because just my initial first impressions after I got through the whole thing for the first time was I don't really remember anything from it. I came out the other end of the first listen going, I can't really recall any of the songs apart from the ones that were released ahead of the album, which was weird because it's Gojira. Yeah, what were your initial thoughts on this thing?
Well, I'd already heard all the singles that had come out before the album, so that was kind of like half the album in itself.
Yeah, it's the first three. Yeah,
Yeah, and then also Into the Storm and The Chant, which is a really weird track we'll get
yeah,
into.
we'll get to that.
So when I first heard the whole thing in context, it almost felt like the first three tracks are like an almost EP, and then there's
Yeah,
just like the rest of it.
yeah, I know what you mean. I never hadn't thought about that. That's a very good point. It's like when Tool released Fear Inoculum, the first 3 tracks of that 7-track thing had already been released. So I kind of wish bands would stop doing that. I know why it's to promote the album and whatnot, but I don't know. It's kind of like you're ruining the first experience of a third of your album, really.
Yeah,
But
like maybe do like one or two in advance from like different, like maybe one from each side of the record,
yeah, it's
rather than just half of it in one go.
sure. I'm a bit of a snob. I'm always one of those. If you're going to listen to an album, listen to it all the way through in one sitting. Don't just pick songs here and there. So when I hear, well, when a good it's not even like random tracks here and there. It's the first 3 tracks on the album I'd already heard. So it's almost like it's like a demo for a video game. It's like, well, I've played this bit already. Can we move on now, please? But yeah, that's a random rant tangent, I suppose. But it did impact my first impressions of the album. But I guess we'll go into some specific songs. Born for One Thing, in my notes, I wrote very Silvera run hook riff going on, but without a real hook that Silvera has.
Yeah,
Uh, I think Magma Part 2 is a vibe I get with this thing, with this album, and you'll either love that or you hate that, depending on what kind of Gojira fan you are. But Magma, but not as good, I think, is why I didn't quite jive with this on the first listen. Born for One Thing still sounds massive though.
yeah. I mean, Joe DePontia, the vocalist slash guitarist, frontman of the band, has said that's going to be the opener when they eventually get touring again.
Yeah, I can see that.
That'd be pretty good, I think. I mean, it's the same with any Gojira album or track. The drums are just excellent.
Oh, he's one of the best drummers in heavy metal right now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the opening snare where he's playing a lot of ghost notes and accenting certain parts. And it's all, when I first heard the track, I was like, what the fuck is he playing it? It sounded like 4/4, or just straight quarter or eighth note, if you will, but it is like weird triplets.
Yeah,
But the pulsing kick drum keeps the pulse going. And you sort of go, oh, okay, now I can groove to this. But then it throws again when the main kind of verse comes in, and you realize, oh, I was following this completely wrong.
That's also why I need you here because I know shit about drums. Really, on this channel, I talk mostly about vocals and guitar because I know that kind of shit. But yeah, I don't know dick about drums, but I know from listening to it and from hearing other drummers, this guy is the fucking machine. But yeah, it was it kind of felt like little bit of a limp opener to me. Again, partly I guess because I'd already heard the damn thing. I shouldn't have heard it in advance. But anyway, I can see it working really, really well live. A part of me in the back of my head wonders if this band are writing songs to be played live now rather than writing album concepts. I don't want to accuse them of being that. I don't know. I wasn't in the room, but it kind of does feel like these are songs to be done live. For example, the next track, Amazonia, is an interesting. I think it's probably one of the best songs on the album. It's really, really neat concept. I love the tribal aesthetic. I've written in my notes here. It's like Sepultura's Roots album, but good. I don't mind that album that much, but it's a bit overrated.
I think it's fucking cool, but yeah, perhaps a bit of old versus new Sepultura. Well, new Sepultura 20 years ago, but you know.
I like New Sepultura. Um, yeah, Amazonia are probably going to be the flagship song of the album, I guess. I mean, they've got a tour with Alien Weaponry now. It's just that'd be really cool.
I hate to say it, but maybe judging by if Gojira played mainly new material, maybe the younger band might show them up.
uh, Alien Weaponry are great. Um, yes, Amazonia. What did you make of it?
So, like you said, I kind of really like that tribal aesthetic because it makes sense. It's about like the destruction of the Amazon rainforest that's been going on for fucking far too long at this point. Until I don't know if you saw the Needle Drop do review of this album. He pointed out the jaw harp that Joe's playing has absolutely nothing to do with that culture. It's just there for some reason.
I was thinking when I heard this, I thought, is this a very uh, Western world interpretation of another culture's music? Because you get that all the fucking time. Like any kind of Western person or group trying to replicate music of another culture will Westernify it really to the point where it doesn't resemble authentically what they're trying to do, which I guess, to be fair, I know I bagged on Roots a little bit. Apparently that one does it really, really well. But yeah, so I was thinking back in my head, are they just kind of a little bit appropriating here? But that's not a topic for me to judge as a cis white male.
I mean, because I've seen interviews with Joe and Mario talking about that song, and they actually went to the rainforest and spoke to the tribes there. And I don't know if you're aware, they've set up the charity fundraiser thing. Loads
Absolutely.
of stuff like Justin Chancellor from Tool, Slash. I think Tom Araya from ex Slayer now.
Yeah.
Donated a
Yeah, if I can find it, I'll leave a link to it in the description below so people can check it out because worthy cause for sure. Again, probably the flagship song of the album, I would wager, and probably one of the better songs as well. So that's pretty fortunate.
I mean, I think it's gonna be really good live when that. It'd probably be like a mid-set song, like a counting, and then straight into that groove, that one-note kind of bendy riff.
Yeah, I can see it being like a third or fourth track, maybe on a live show that open with Born for One Thing, and then do with I don't know, if they lead us straight from Born for One Thing into Silvera, it just would be very seamless. But whatever.
That massive song.
Yeah, exactly. Another World. I think that lead riff is a tad repetitive. It just sort of keeps going, and again, big chorus. I've heard most of Gojira's stuff, but not intricately and repeatedly enough to recall a lot of it to memory. But have they ever had an album that's had this much emphasis on choruses? Because they are very dominant in this album. Not that that's a bad thing, but there's a lot of big choruses.
Yeah, we'll get to that song that uses it far too much. Yeah, I mean, I like Another World quite a lot. When it came out, it was the first song they'd released since Magma,
Yeah.
and I didn't know it was going to be on the new album. I thought it was like a one-off single thing, like when Slipknot released that song. I forget the name of now. Before,
Oh God, yeah, with the video of all the people in red costumes and whatnot.
yeah, the super edgy prison video, because that always goes well when metal bands film in prisons. I said Amber,
Yeah,
but you know, no, I can appreciate you saying the riff is quite repetitive. I like the arpeggiated kind of palm muted. It's simple, but it's quite effective. And the fact that Mario has taken a massive step back and just playing a straight groove
right.
helps the guitars become the emphasis of like where the pulse is and where you should be nodding your head.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. I think it felt like a old hat, I suppose, because a repeated riff run. Let's face it, we've heard that a lot from Gojira. We've even heard it already on this album with the first track. So maybe just sort of went over my head because it's like, okay, we're doing this again. Um, after that, though, we'll mostly get into the new territory with new stuff. Newfound. Um, I think the chorus, again, we're going back to choruses, um, when he's belting the hell out, it's the best bit of clean vocals on the album. It's a really nice little bit. I forget the lyrics, I'm going to get them up. This is why I like doing off the cuff reviews, because I can now go off on tangents. Newfound Gojira lyrics. Newfound splendor in the sky, newfound land across the sea. The way he delivers across the sea, he is fucking going for it on the vocals, and it's really, really cool. That's one of my favourite little sections of the whole album. Really, really loved that. What do you make of Newfound?
I've got to be honest.
Hey, here we go.
I find it quite dull because we've heard. At this point, I've heard 6 albums before this, and the same can be said for the track before this. Hold on, as well. It's just sort of generic Gojira, just
Sure.
mid-tempo double kick, loads of pick scrapes and stuff, and it's just like, okay. And that's the
Uh,
opposite of what thing they started doing on Stranded in the previous album.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, the chorus again, I really liked, but I didn't have much to say for the rest of the song, so I guess that probably says a lot. But again, with the focus on choruses, they're really going for the choruses on this thing. It very much feels like an album that's going to be best experienced live, with 15,000 people going fucking ballistic for it. And if anyone can pull in a crowd live, it's fucking Gojira. Let's be fair.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Fortitude, this kind of thing, really, really annoys me. Um, so it reminds me of I go off on massive rants on this channel about like 1 minute sound intros to albums that they're a separate track, but they're a minute and they're like a build up of sound, and then it goes into the second track, which is actually part of the first track. I'm like, just make it one fucking thing, for God's sake. It's you're a prog metal band. Why is Fortitude not part of the chant? Just make it a set way, and that's your title track. It's the title of the album, for fuck's sake. Make it 7 minutes and call it Fortitude. Oh God, it's really stupid and really petty, but it annoys me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's this album's almost instrumental track, and Gojira have done at least one of these sort of minute, 2 minute long instrumental kind of excursions on all their albums so far. But this one is just like, I don't know, it's okay. I kind of like the percussion and the overall vibe of it.
Mm.
It's just a shame that the entire track Fortitude is just the chorus on the chant.
Yeah, it's
The
part of the
chant,
same track.
I,
So
I get what you're saying. It should be one track, but the chant is too fucking long anyway.
yeah, the chant goes on. It's I like the concept, And that chant is the chant of the chant. So it's an honest title, I suppose. Maybe that's why they had to split it up, call the instrumental the title track, and then we gotta call this the chant. But
Yeah.
yeah, I like that idea. I think it's done moderately okay. But yeah, that one in particular does feel like it goes on a little bit too long. Maybe it's because it feels intrinsically linked to Fortitude. It feels like 7 minutes. But I would have thought as a prog metal band, they should be able to make that work.
I really do think it's just the chorus is repeated too much.
Yeah, that could well also be the case.
It starts off quite nicely. That groove is very. I keep using the word groove because it's a Gojira album. It's packed full of grooves, but it just gets a bit stale after a while.
Yeah,
The riff during the chorus, that kind of ascending. I don't know what they call it. Kind of hammer on pull off sort of thing Joe does in between the lines. That's quite nice.
yeah, it's a song with nice little moments, but buried under a very in-your-face chorus once again. We're starting to get into a theme here.
Mm. Amongst the fan base, I don't know if you're are on any of the Gojira pages on Facebook.
Not at the moment.
So this is definitely the make or break track on the album. When this came out, about dead down the middle, half people loved it, half people said, "I don't want to listen to Gojira anymore.
That's
They're officially shit now."
that's a bit extreme.
I
It's
know.
I feel like we are harping on a lot of negatives here, but there is still some great moments here, and if this were any other band, this would be considered an incredible album, really.
Yeah, for sure.
The last four tracks, I think, is where the album. This is where it starts to get really good because this Sphinx is heavy as fuck. It's the heaviest track on the album. This one's for the old fans, for sure.
Yeah, and it boasts a lot of Joe's really guttural. It's the least melodic he sounded on the whole thing in terms of vocals.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely veering further away from that. I mean, harsh vocals are still, there's plenty of them, but it feels more 50-50 now between clean and harsh, which nothing wrong with that, but definitely not what they were originally known for. Was there much clean vocals before Magma? I can't remember.
Here and there. I mean, songs like "Global Warming," the closing track on from Master Sirius. The first half is mostly just clean verses, and then it just gets really heavy towards the end.
Oh yeah.
And they've thrown in cleans here and there. I mean, Magma was the first time when they were like, let's have these massive, soaring, clean choruses that people can latch
Yeah.
onto.
Ooh, excuse me. Yes, but again, that one's really. I hope they play that one. I hope they play Sphinx live because that's when that there's greatest potential for brutal as hell mosh pits from this album specifically. Into the Storm, really really good. Of the tracks that were released ahead of the album, this is the one that was like, okay, yeah, there's time to get excited. New Gojira, because this one's really good, really really good riffs and very full guitar work. Like it's a lot of layered stuff going on. You know this. I'm on a bit of a Devon Townsend binge at the moment, so big layered production is very much my jam right now because Devi, of course, does that all the fucking time, and it feels like that's what they're doing on Into the Storm. So I found that really really enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, because I first heard this song before the album came out as well, and the first thing I noticed again was the drums. That really, I guess, like syncopated, offbeat polyrhythm on the ride bell that he's playing. That does sound a bit like a train crossing signal, but kind of helps that idea of like the track just thundering along before it kind of breaks down into this epic chorus with these really motivational lyrics that Joe wasn't
Oh,
pull out.
yeah. Is this the track with the line, "Put your fist in the air"?
Yeah, which
Yeah.
if you read it and go, oh, it's a metal song where they say "put your fist in the air."
Yeah, I mean, I like the song, but I think they can probably write better lyrics than that. Fist in the air. what is this 2000s Rise Against or something?
Oh dear.
Yeah, thoroughly played out that whole fist in the air thing, but whatever. I guess it works. I mean,
You'll be fine,
there's a band called Disturbed and made a career out of that kind of thing.
mate.
Uh, yeah, the Trials and Grind, two tracks they kind of I feel more or less the same on. Good driving songs that push us to the end of the album. I can't remember which one it is, but one of them feels like it goes on a bit too long. I think it might be the Trials, even though it's only 4 minutes. Didn't feel like that one had a real idea in it. You know, like this the
Because they've done songs like The Trails before, stuff like Lowlands of a Magma, um, Born in Winter on L'Enfant Sauvage, where you kind of start with this really clean, kind of steady groove, and then it just erupts into like skull-splittingly heavy, which is epic choruses full of screaming and. But it's really emotional at the same time. I think the trail, sorry, it just sort of goes on and it doesn't quite reach its full potential. I don't think.
yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's only 4 minutes, which it's uh just shy of the shortest track on the album, but it feels like it feels like it doesn't really have much to say. Um, but again, I come back to it's still good. It's still really well written. In terms of it's well performed and it's a good metal song. I just this album, man. Um, I think where I if I were to really try and dissect what I think's going on here, the band definitely from Magma till now have been stylistically shifting, testing the waters with something a little bit new. Some people think it's more mainstream. I don't. If it is more mainstream, I don't care. I just care about if it sounds good or not. But whereas something like Opeth did a severe diversion to the point where it was kind of pointless arguing if it was better or worse. It was just more arguing which two styles do you prefer. Whereas here, it feels more they've just removed something. They've taken out their heaviest bits, and the only thing that they added to them were more choruses.
Yeah, and I want to be fair to Gojira because they're still one of my absolute favorite bands of all time, and I'm definitely going to be going to see them when they tour again in the UK. But bands like Opeth and Mastodon, when they kind of went from that pretty heavy, um, very high emphasis on the harsher vocals and the more metal kind of sound of things. When they started to branch out and do, we're going to write really melodic stuff. It turned out they were also really fucking good at that as well.
Exactly.
Whereas
Yeah.
with Gojira, maybe not quite so much.
Yeah. 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 I suppose so. Because as we've been saying, we've said a lot on this album of how things either go on a bit too long or they didn't feel like a solid idea for a track. They just sort of meander a little bit. There are some really, really awesome little moments on this album. Really good moments where I can pick it. Like, for example, I said on Newfound, that chorus is one of the best bits of clean vocals on the whole album, but I can't really point to a song, with the exception of maybe Sphinx, where I'm like, that song in its entirety is great and really, really good. And maybe that's kind of the problem. But it surprises me because Magma was also a stylistic shift from what they'd done before, but that album was brilliant. So I'm not too sure what happened here.
I think, I mean, as someone who listened to Gojira quite a lot, I'll be completely honest. I think a lot of it is just running out of ideas. A lot of it is just stuff we've heard before. Whereas it's like the classic Gojira metal sound, but a bit maybe playing it a bit safe.
Perhaps. Yeah, 'cause it feels like they're fast approaching just sort of the typical modern heavy metal kind of style. Like, there are bands at the moment where they don't really fall into a subcategory. They're just sort of defined as heavy metal. Like Lamb of God or Devil Driver, Machine Head, that kind of thing. Not that any of those bands are bad, with the exception of the newest Machine Head album. Jesus Christ. Lamb of God are amazing. They're one of the best bands ever. It feels like Gojira are shifting more towards that, but they're not changing their sound as seamlessly as Opeth, Mastodon, and Athma, as seamlessly as they were able to do it. I still give them props for doing it. I'm not one of those knobheads who think bands should not change it. I loved you for that. Well, how dare you change your sound?
Yeah. It's funny you should mention Lamb of God as well, because Randy Blythe actually wrote a review for Fortitude himself, and he said Gojira have set the bar again. And I'm thinking, have they though, or are they just your
Have they?
mates?
Yeah, it's good. I think take away it's not great. It's good, but I think it's not a bad album. It's probably their worst.
Yeah,
Um,
to be completely fair, yeah.
but that does not automatically mean it's bad. It recalls to me when Fear Inoculum came out. Everyone going, "This is obviously Tool's worst album," and I went, "Maybe it's still great. It's still, a less than stellar Tool album is still better than most albums, really." And I think you can kind of approach this the same sort of way. It's not, it's a less than stellar Gojira album, but still a good album and really crushing to listen to. I almost imagine if I got the vinyl for this, it would sound fucking massive, just on big speakers and whatnot. Those choruses would just send chills down your spine in that setting, whereas not just in terms of its general execution.
Yeah. I guess the question is, would you recommend this album to people?
Yeah, I would. I would recommend it. It's not bad. It's good. It's good music. So why not listen to some good music, really? Kishira still they know how to bring it in specific moments, but I would recommend any other Gojira album over this.
Yeah.
Um,
Like if
Magma
you
Part
didn't like
2.
Magma, so go on.
I really liked Magma, but I not this album didn't. This album falls short in. It does feel like a Magma follow up, which is fine, but a lot of the time I feel like I'd rather be listening to that one. Like when I listen to Born for One Thing and there's that Silvera-esque riff, I'm just reminded of how fucking perfect Silvera is, and I don't really think that's what they wanted to achieve.
Yeah, like I say, if you didn't like Magma, because that was very divisive when that came out as well amongst the Gojira fan base. If you didn't like that, you're not gonna like Fortitude.
For sure.
And the way I've kind of summed it up in my notes is, if Magma is to L'Enfant Sauvage what the Black Album was to Unjustice for All, then Fortitude is to Magma what Euthanasia is to Countdown to Extinction.
That's I don't think anything can be said that more perfectly sums it up. To be fair, I might start doing that more often as analogies to other bands. So I don't know if we dissected that album any more coherently than I could have done on my own. So thank you very much, my man, for joining me on this review. And
You're welcome.
yeah, no, cheers, thank you very much. And just special announcement, guys. You're hearing it here first. I'll do an official announcement on the Instagrams and whatnot. This lovely gentleman, Wiz, is now officially joining the Crushing Sounds team. So, yeah, so Reuben, my buddy from my band, is going to be joining myself and Mike to bring you some awesome heavy metal content. So, what have you got coming up planned, Reuben, for your awesome debut?
So, me and Chris were discussing the ideas for content, and one of those was a kind of getting into series. And as I mentioned in private conversation, yours and Mike's retrospective on Blind Guardian, which is a band I'm very new to, but slowly kind of getting into. That was very, very helpful. So I was thinking we do something similar with a band that we both are very heavily into, the mighty Swedish prog titans Opeth.
it's one I've wanted to do for a while, because everyone, my viewers know, fucking love Opeth. So really looking forward to doing that. So look out for that in the near future. So welcome, Reuben. I'm sure we're going to have loads of fun, and of course, what you are joining us on our annual trip to the hallowed ground of Bloodstock.
Oh yes, it's my
So
first. It's not only my first time at Bloodstock, it's my first proper metal festival as well.
it's gonna be a riot. Can't wait to introduce you to the greatest metal festival in the country, really, and our Crushing Sound's second home, as it were. So fingers crossed, Bloodstock goes ahead. It's looking a bit shaky, but whenever we should get to Bloodstock again, that's going to be amazing. So thanks for joining me, man. Looking forward to our upcoming Opeth video, and welcome to Crushing Sounds.
Thank you.